Welcome back, everybody, to the Cyclonic Thrift channel. Today I was planning on showing you guys a new deck build for my own personal collection for Shorikai Genesis engine. A super cool vehicle commander that I just love the value of. Unfortunately, the video file was lost, and once you build a deck, it's really hard to go back and build it again since you already have it. So instead, I didn't want to leave you guys in the lurch. I still have the full deck list. I'll still link it in the description. So instead of today's normal video time lapse of me going through all the cards, instead I'm just going to pick out a few and discuss them like I would in a normal budget deck tech. But obviously this is from the framework of this being from all of my own collection. It's going to be a slightly shorter video in the time frame of these normal deck building ones. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So as I mentioned before, the commander for this deck is going to be Shorikai Genesis engine. It's a 2 and Azorius legendary artifact vehicle, an 8/8, and it has this ability, which is pay 1, tap it. You draw 2 cards and then discard a card. And you create a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token with this creature crews vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. And then it has crew 8 as its vehicle crew. And as I mentioned, yeah, it's an 8/8. So if you do manage to crew this up into a vehicle, it can be a beater. But really what we want to focus on is that ability there. Drawing and creating tokens for 1 mana and tapping it is super high value. It's an artifact, so you'll be able to activate this ability as long as you have the mana for it on the turn you play Shorikai. And yeah, there's just a lot of different things we can do with this deck. I went in the direction of a mix between vehicle tribal and card draw value. So we're going to have a lot of ways to play artifacts, play vehicles, and then we're also going to have a sub-theme of things that will happen when we draw those cards, because this thing is a house. It's gonna make a lot of impact over the course of a game, especially if we have ways to untap it, which you may or may not see as we get into these cards here. But yeah, Shorikai is a super interesting commander. The vehicle card type in the command zone is something that we don't see a whole lot of. So yeah, I'm excited to see how this deck plays, and without further ado, let's get into some of these cards. So the first one I wanted to talk about is Ethereum Sculptor. It's 1 and a blue for an artifact creature, Vidalcan Artificer. It's a 1/2, and it is a almost automatic include in any artifact themed deck that has blue, because it has artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So you know, the majority of our creatures, our combo pieces are all going to be artifacts in some shape or form. And so this is just going to give us so much ramp, so much value throughout the course of a game. Yeah, it being a nice cheap 2 drop, get it out on turn 2, and from there just keep churning out the value. The next card is Shimmermere. It's 3 mana for an artifact creature, Mirror. It has flash, and we can cast artifact spells as though they had flash. So again, this on its own doesn't do a whole lot, you know, as a 2/2 creature, but the ability to play our artifacts at flash speed is super fun. We're going to be able to do a ton of shenanigans, especially with the sub-theme of vehicles. If we're able to throw down our vehicles at instant speed and then tap our creatures to crew them, we're going to be able to create instant blockers out of nowhere in a way that our opponents are really not going to be able to prepare for. So this Shimmermere is going to result in some super interesting interactions, and I'm very excited to see how it plays in this deck. The next 2 cards I brought in, they're going to be very critical to this deck strategy because of their ability to untap our commander. Now, Shorikai's ability is awesome. We love doing it. We love tapping to draw 2 cards and discard a card, but we're going to love doing it multiple times a turn even better. So the first one is Manifold Key. It's a 1 mana artifact, so it sticks with the theme. You can pay 1 and tap it to untap another target artifact, aka Shorikai, or you can pay 3 and tap it and target creature can't be blocked this turn. Also, super interesting if we have a massive vehicle that we want to get in for damage, aka Shorikai, and we want to make sure it hits, then that's great. But we're really planning on using this for that untap ability. That's where most of the value of this card is going to be found, because for 1 mana, we get to redo the process, and yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. And then another card that's gonna do a very similar thing is Kelpie Guide. It's 2 and a blue for a creature beast 2/2. It has tap to untap another target permanent you control, aka Shorikai, and tap to tap target permanent. Activate only if you control 8 or more lands. That one again, if late in the game you need to tap something down, great. But the value of this card is going to be in that untapping permanent ability. And the permanent, the flexibility there is important. You could use it to untap a land if you need an extra mana. You could untap a creature if you need a blocker. Obviously, you can untap artifacts like Shorikai to activate their ability again. So that flexibility is going to be helpful in a way that the Manifold Key can't quite match. And then the next 2 cards here deal a little bit more specifically with when we activate Shorikai's ability. So with that ability, we're going to be 1 drawing cards and 2 discarding cards. So we want to have other cards in our deck that will allow us to take advantage of those game actions. So the first one is Ominous Seas. It's 1 and a blue for an enchantment. Whenever you draw a card, you put a Foreshadow counter on Ominous Seas, and then you can remove 8 Foreshadow counters from Ominous Seas and create an 8/8 blue Kraken creature token. I mean, when this is in like a normal deck where you're drawing 1, maybe 2 cards a turn, it's cool, right? You get that Kraken maybe 5 turns. With Shorikai, we're going to be drawing at least 3 cards a turn, right? And we'll probably have some other spell or permanent that allows us to draw another card. So there's a possibility that we get this in 2 turns. It's also, again, a super cheap enchantment, 1 in a blue, so we get this down early, start massing that value quickly. Yeah, I see this card as having a big impact, because 8/8 Krakens are nothing to sneeze at. But then we also want to take advantage of that second half of the card draw discard ability. And we're going to do that by using cards like Bag of Holding, which is a 1 mana artifact, again, fits the theme. And whenever you discard a card, you exile that card from your graveyard. It goes away? Keegan, why are we exiling our cards? We want them around. Well, random viewer, that's going to come in just a second, but the next ability that Bag of Holding has is you pay 2, tap it, draw a card, and discard a card. Again, fits into that card draw strategy. If we have Ominous Seas out, we get another counter on that thing. But then the last ability being 4 and a tap, you sacrifice this and return all cards exiled to Bag of Holding to their owner's hand. Yeah, so we're discarding those cards initially, but we're not really going to lose them, because eventually we can just refill our hand using this artifact. Now, it is a little tricky, right? If this gets removed before you're able to activate that ability, they are exiled, right? They're gone. And 4 mana is not a cheap amount. So I would recommend being cautious with this card, not letting, more than maybe 10 cards be exiled with it, because yeah, a very carefully placed removal spell is going to kind of screw you, because then not only do you not have those cards back in your hand, but you also don't have them in your graveyard, where, we do still have some way of interacting with that and getting those back. So you got to be careful with this. Honestly, if you're at 4, something like that, it's kind of like you'll pay 4 and draw 4, which is a super great rate. But yeah, otherwise, being able to save or kind of stash away those cards that we're discarding is going to be super helpful in this deck. And then these last 2 cards are just 2 cards I'm very excited to play. I think they're going to have a big impact. The first is a card that I've played in multiple decks, is, in my opinion, a staple for artifact-themed decks, again, that have blue. And that card is Tezzeret, Betrayer of Flesh. So he's 2 and 2 blue for Legendary Planeswalker. Comes in with 4 loyalty. And he has a static ability, which is the first activated ability of an artifact, aka Shorikai. You activate each turn, costs 2 less to cast, making Shorikai's ability free. But again, if we wanted to use that ability to discount the Bag of Holding ability, we can totally do that. We can draw a card, discard a card for free, or get all those cards we've discarded back for only 2 mana instead of 4. Then it has a +1 where you draw 2 cards, again, the draw strategy, then discard 2 cards, unless you discard an artifact card. Again, the discard strategy. We love that. It has a -2 of target artifact becomes an artifact creature. If it isn't a vehicle, it has base power and toughness 4/4. So this is a great way we can just make one of our 1-drop artifacts a 4/4 creature, and it's not till end of turn, it's just forever. But where I really would love to apply this ability is, again, on Shorikai. Because Shorikai is an 8/8, right? And it has crew 8, which is a lot. It's going to be making those pilots, so eventually, we'll have the creatures to do it. But having to tap down that many creatures each turn in order to just attack with an 8/8 is a significant cost. But this way, we play Tezzeret down for 4 mana, -2 it, still have him around, and Shorikai becomes an 8/8 creature until it gets removed. Yeah, I mean, that kind of discount for that ability is super cool. But the real kicker is its ultimate, right? So -6, you get an emblem whenever an artifact you control becomes tapped, draw a card. And this is just beautiful. I mean, Shorikai himself, again, if you're using his ability to tap, you're drawing 2 cards, discarding a card, but you're actually drawing 3 cards and discarding a card because of Tezzeret's emblem here. I've only gotten to get it once. Tezzeret does tend to be a bit of a removal magnet, not only because of these activated abilities, but the static ability of reducing the costs of artifact abilities is super powerful, and you'll see that once you get them on the field. But yeah, Tezzeret is just a super spicy card. There's so much on here that you can take advantage of in your game. And then the final card I want to talk about here is Mech Titan Core. It's a 2-mana artifact vehicle. It's a 2/4. So on its face, without the abilities, not that exciting. It has crew 2, which isn't bad, but crew 2 for a 2/4 isn't amazing. But you can pay 5 and exile Mech Titan Core and 4 other artifact creatures and or vehicles you control. So we're paying 5 and exiling 5 artifact creatures or vehicles, basically. And we create Mech Titan, a legendary 10/10 construct artifact creature token with flying, vigilance, trample, lifelink, and haste that's all colors. When that token leaves the battlefield, gets destroyed, gets exiled, gets sacrificed, you return all cards exiled with Mech Titan Core, except Mech Titan Core, to the battlefield tapped under their owner's control. So, again, I don't know exactly when this is going to be able to come out, but my idea of creating the Power Rangers Voltron, basically, this 10/10 bomb, put it on the battlefield, has haste, you can attack with it right away, has lifelink, so you're going to gain that life, it has vigilance and flying, so it's going to be an excellent blocker. It's just beautiful. And honestly, the downside of exiling all those artifact creatures and vehicles at the beginning is a significant cost. But the fact that when that Mech Titan leaves the battlefield, not when it dies or when it's exiled, right, that the narrowing, if it leaves the battlefield at all, we get all of that stuff back except for the Mech Titan Core itself, which is fine. It's done its job. It's a big cost, and it'd be interesting to see which moments in a game it's truly worth going after. But just the thought of being able to drop this massive bomb on the field really excites me. I'm very on board with something like this. So yeah, with that, that brings us to the end of this kind of unusual deck building episode. I hope you guys still enjoyed. As always, please check out the link in the description for the full deck list. And yeah, thanks for making it to the end of the video. As always, if you aren't subscribed yet, please do. We're a wonderful channel, very educational, looking to just educate people about how to build Magic in a budget way, and still compete with some of the high-powered decks out there. To have fun, but also to have a strategy and a thought process behind how you're doing it. And yeah, until the next video, stay thrifty.